All right, so thank you for tuning in to episode 20 of Brunch with Besties. Of course, you have Sherry Renee and my beautiful co-host.
Chanel.
And this episode, we're still talking about Soar.
Awesome. Yay.
We are doing part 2 of Soar. But as always, we start with a toast first. So Chanel, who are you toasting to today?
I'm going to toast to all the podcasts that will be a part of the Ugly Sweater Party that will be happening, I guess, when this drops this Saturday. So make sure you come out and support that and all the pods that are involved with it. It's going to be a good time. So make sure you're there. Come out.
Yes, definitely. I'm going to toast to Potty Pearls.
Awesome. Yeah.
So Potty Pearls is a business. It's actually similar to, what is it called, Chanel?
See, you put me on the spot and now I can't think of what it's called.
Oh, I know what it is. It's called Potpourri.
Yeah.
Poopery.
Poopery. Yes.
So Potty Girls is something that every girl should have in her drawer at work.
Oh, that's the slogan. I mean, it's right.
No, I'm not saying that that's the slogan, but I'm saying that's my recommendation because you never know when the spirit will move you.
Listen, you never know. Depending on what you have for lunch, you got to be ready.
Exactly. Listen. But then you'll be ready. And the thing about Potty Pearls is that they work.
Awesome.
And I know.
Hey,
because I tried them.
I cannot take you right now. I know.
They were in my drawer at work. I ordered them, and then, the spirit came upon me. Listen. And I was like, oh, no.
Listen. And she had her Potty Pearls ready. It was ready.
I had them ready, and all was well.
Awesome. Yay.
So toast to them.
Shout out and toast and all that for that. Yes.
Yes. All right, so let's break bread. So what's going on, Chanel?
I'm counting down the days to our holiday break. So we're on 5 days out. So in 5 days, I can crack open my big bag of Flamin' Hots and lay in the bed and watch Netflix all day.
Yes, that sounds like the dream right there.
This is the life. I can't wait.
The big bag of Flamin' Hots?
Like a big one, like the like the family size bag. Like I want like a real big one.
But what's funny is like the big bag is still really small.
It is, and it's like mostly air. Like, come on, Frito-Lay, y'all tripping.
Right.
So yeah.
Yes. So what's going on with me is there's a wedding this weekend.
Yep.
Because 'tis the season, apparently. 30 is the year for everybody to get married.
Just get their life.
Right. So our bestie governor is getting married this weekend. So I will be in Ohio.
Aww.
Partaking in all the festivities. And then while I'm there, I'm going to jump over and see Escape for the Great Escape Tour. And Tamar Braxton, because I'm a Tamartian. Yep. And Monica, because I love her.
Yes. Oh, that's going to be awesome.
Yes.
All those 90s feels.
Yes. And we always take everything back to the 99.
Yes.
So
great time.
So I can't wait.
Great music.
I'm with it.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
So our tip for the week is Jazzy Ray Jewels and Accessories. Mm-hmm. So Jazzy Ray Jewels and Accessories is a woman's clothing store. They specialize in unique, one-of-a-kind clothing. In particular, statement jewelry and trendy fashion. So Jazzy Ray Jewels is located at 4307 West Fleet in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You can also shop anytime online and also check out our page to see some of our favorites.
Yeah.
So again, you can shop online at www.jazzyrayjewels.com. That's www.jazzyrayjewels.com.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out our pictures.
Yes, definitely. And also, this episode is also brought to you by Audible.
Yep, don't forget.
So join our book club. Get your free 30-day trial with Audible. We are currently reading Soar by T.D. Jakes. You can use our link, www.audibletrial.com/BWB, BWB as in Brunch with Besties, to get your free trial for any audiobook.
Yes, do that right now. And we've also been getting a lot of feedback. People have been like, oh, we'll read this book, or y'all should look at this book. So Go ahead and get that trial so we can get this
Yes.
going.
Yes. So now it's time for tea time.
Yay.
So we are picking up on chapter 3.
Yep.
Chapter 3 is called Damsel Arise. So one of the things that he talked about was his mom, how she had multiple streams of income. So she sold Avon, she did real estate. He was talking about how she created a nest egg to purchase her first home, and then she kept repeating that process. So she had multiple streams of income. She was determined to figure out what she was going to do for retirement.
Yeah. Which is really forward thinking. He said that too, as you know, in the book. But which is really forward thinking, you know, thinking back then that, oh, I have to like kind of prepare myself for retirement, you know, who knows. But, and even every time he talks about his mom, like thinking about her being a school teacher, and that's what I do as well. It's just like, how did she find the time to have all those multiple streams of income when she also had a family and children? So that drive it definitely showed through, and it's making me think like, well, you ain't have as much as she got. Like, why are you not doing all this stuff? And I'm always like, oh, I wish I had more money, but I could. So it definitely put my own life in perspective, like hearing him talk about his mother and just her drive and her ability to kind of, you know, help bring home money to their family, which was really awesome.
Right, definitely. And I would agree, you know, I think it's about wanting it bad enough. And then also I think having the need. I think a lot of times people find, you know, when you get to that point where it's pivotal, where it's like, you know what, sink or swim.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know, then sometimes things like this, right, creating all these businesses can come from that. But then also I think it comes from what we're taught, right?
Right.
So what example, because if you think about it, T.D. Jakes has done the same thing at a much bigger scale, but he pretty much duplicated what he was taught from his mom and his dad. And I mean, I guess, you know, for me, my mom had her own business, but it was very short lived. And you might remember when she started it. No?
Didn't she have like a daycare, like a school or something?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So she started a school back when I was like 16. Yeah. But it was very short lived. You know what I mean? So, and sometimes I wonder like what would have happened if she would have persevered or even just kind of planned for that difficult time, you know? Yeah. But like my grandfather has always had his own business. My dad has his own business, you know. I think my family is definitely some hustlers.
Right. Yeah. That's a good spirit to have. Not to say that, you know, I mean, my mom is definitely a worker, like, but she's more like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and this is like kind of safe for me. So she's been at the same job for like 20 years or probably more than that. But she's more responsible with her funds, whereas I'm just like, ow, make it rain. So yeah, so that's kind of where it comes in for me. But just to have that mindset that, you know, I can dibble and dabble in these different things. Like I'm not tied down to this one career option or money making option was really dope to me. And that's kind of where I am right now in my personal life, where I'm so glad that, you know, we had this idea to read this book, because I definitely think it's God talking to me like, okay, well, you know, you've asked for all these things, but here go all the ingredients. I'm giving it to you right here. Now I want you to read this book and you do what you want with it. So it's definitely right on time.
Speaking of which, so there's also a study guide that came with this audiobook. And one of the first questions in chapter 3 is, do you believe God has anointed this next season of your life for you to build and launch your vision?
Right on time. Yes. Amen. That's definitely my back and forth thoughts with myself every day. Like, you know, I've been an educator for 5 years. And if you are an educator, you know that 5 year, you make it there. It's like, okay, do I keep going or do I stop? Like now I'm to the point where it's like, I think I'm done being in the classroom. And not to say that that's not a part of my purpose or my passion, because I do have a passion to help people and to lead people, and I pour into people. But I think I need to do it in another avenue. And I love that in this book Soar that T.D. Jakes was talking about how you can reinvent yourself at any time. So it's not like, oh, well, now I'm 30, I kind of need to stay here because I'm getting so old. But it's like, no, you can continue to reinvent yourself whenever you have that desire to, or if you have that, that inspiration to kind of go forward. I think it can happen. So this is absolutely anointed by God and right on time for me personally.
And so it also says, how has he prepared you and equipped you so that you can bring your dreams to life?
Listen.
So like, what are those ingredients, or what is that? Before we talked about how people pray for chairs, but God only gives you trees.
Yeah.
So what's the tree that you're going to turn into a chair?
So for the tree for me, I think looking back at all the things that I've learned by being an educator, just being able to work with people and building relationships, I think wherever I do decide to go, I'll take all of those skills and strategies that I've learned through being an educator along with me. Which will make whatever I choose to do. I got some ideas in my head. It'll make that transition smoother. And also just being able to use my resources. I think I've built enough relationships with people and my friends, and we know people, and we're kind of interconnected, where I can reach out and kind of ask questions and not be afraid to do that. Because now I feel like God has put those people in those positions so that I can kind of move around and do, whatever my next steps are.
Right. And I agree. I think that it's, like you said, just us using our resources, being aware of them, but then also realizing other things. Like, one of the things that we talked about is that, originally we were supposed to be Confessions of a Young Black Professional Woman, but then we shifted the concept to Brunch with Besties, but it really wasn't about brunch. It was really just about like, hey, having girl talk, lighthearted over food, right? But then we were like, hey, we need to tap into this whole brunch thing.
Right.
Like, we might have something there. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's throwing it out there, but it's always been a dream of mine to be on like the Food Network. Like, I watch it a lot. Like, I'm always watching the Food Channel, and there is not a lot of representation of us. So we can just open that door.
Right. So, definitely.
Yeah, listen.
So he talked about to be an effective entrepreneur, you need to prepare for your future to survive. And I think that may have been one of the things that happened with my mom with her business, was that she kind of fell into it. Like, all of a sudden, an opportunity arose and she jumped on it, but then things kind of went awry. So I don't, and I don't think that that's why she was able to continue.
Yeah, and as soon as you brought that up, that's kind of what I thought about. Because he's T.D. Jakes, when I say he spoke a lot to, when you're starting a business, there's a lot of factors that you need to think about. And we talked about this in part 1, where, the Wright brothers had this idea of wanting to have this airplane, but then, in Ohio, they didn't have the wind they needed. So they had to look at, where can I get the wind that I need to get this plane off the ground? And I think when you're wanting to start a business, you have to look at every avenue. So it's not like, oh, well, I want to sell t-shirts and I know this group of people is going to buy t-shirts, but what other climate changes can happen to, either make this t-shirt sell like pop, or it's going to go away fast because you didn't think about every possible thing that could possibly happen. So yeah.
Definitely.
It was a lot of gems. Like these chapters is like the meat.
I
feel like, it was really like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. So he also talked about how women gained a lot of ground in the 60s and the 70s. That's when feminism was kind of emerging, right? So that's when women started to go back to school and women entered the workforce, because that's when World War II happened. And so that's when people started redefining what it meant to be a woman. And so he's saying how now women own 30% of the businesses out there, and 14% of those are African American women.
cracking. Yeah, I saw that on like Instagram like a long time ago. Like, black women are entrepreneurship is like booming, and I was like, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Like, I think it's really dope.
Yeah, the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. He also talked about Ruby Montgomery, right? So she's the one who she loves to sing. So she sang background for Ike and Tina. Ike and Tina, Gina. No, but Ike and Tina.
The review, yes.
But then she had a lung condition that ended her career. So she went back to the kitchen, which was kind of her first love, which kind of made me think about, you know, how me and you started off with like journalism and broadcasting and stuff. We went off, did all this other crap, and now we're talking about
so funny.
We wanted to do media.
Listen, full circle.
Full circle. But she went back to the kitchen, somehow met Oprah, and then she started Sweetie Pies.
Have you ever watched that show?
I have, but I don't watch it religiously, but I've seen a couple episodes.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen it recently either, but the show is really cute, and yeah, she's very inspiring, Miss Sweetie Pies, Miss Robbie. So I thought that was an amazing story, and another thing that I really like about this book, which is why y'all should get our free Audible trial. But another reason why I really like this book is I think T.D. Jakes does a great job of like having a point, but then he gives you like great examples to kind of hit the point home. Exactly. And that's kind of how I learn. Like, I need to see it in real life. Like, how does this apply to like real life? Give me a real life example. And he does a really great job of that. So when he talked about her story, again, it made me think about it's never too late to reinvent yourself. You know, she went back to something that she already could do. It was a part of her purpose. Like, I can cook. Okay, but now let me do it in this other aspect under this other umbrella, which I thought was really inspiring that he kind of talked about that. And now, I mean, she has restaurants everywhere, basically.
Everywhere. And it's crazy because that's what he talked about. He was like, you know, the big lesson here is that she didn't give up when her voice failed her. And I think a lot of times we tend to look at our circumstances and we say like, oh, that didn't work out, or this wasn't successful. So we just go back to what's comfortable. But, you know, because even my grandfather, he had a lot of successful businesses, but he only had a 6th grade education. Because I think I said on another pod that, you know, where he was from, Black people couldn't get an education past 6th grade. So that's all he had. But hey, he still had a lot of successful businesses. So Absolutely. I feel like if he can do that with minimal education, because see, all you got to do is really be smart enough to know what you don't know.
Listen,
you know, and then you outsource it, right? You have someone else do that. So, okay, you know what? I don't really know accounting or finance, so I'm gonna have somebody else do that,
right?
And I'm gonna focus on the thing that I know how to do.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that he was good at, because he actually, as a kid, he picked cotton. You know, isn't that crazy? That's how close. Look, I'm gonna have a small segue. That's how close slavery is to my family.
Crazy.
Is my grandfather, who just passed away this year at 80 years old, literally picked cotton, and his mother did too. My great grandmother, who passed away a couple years ago. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Wow, that is crazy. And that, I think, I don't know, I want to jump the gun, but he talked about, you just mentioned that, you know, your granddad had all these successful businesses, and, you know, he only had a 6th grade education. And in the book, T.D. Jakes was talking about how, you know, the student loan debt, how high it is right now. Yeah. So when he was talking about that, I was like, Lord, don't remind me. My student loans are like really ridiculous at this point. And it just made me think, like, if I would have had this book then, you know, what I could have done with it maybe, and who knows, if I would have taken the route to kind of go through this traditional schooling, to have all these student loans and to do all those things, but who knows. But it definitely made me think that, you know, if you have that, again, that purpose, that drive, and that inspiration and the innovation, which you talked about later on, that you can make it happen.
Right. So he talked about how people often want to start big, but how important it is to really start small and finish big.
This was so important.
Start where you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so he was saying how it's important that people modify their strategy to fit their reality and just use what they have. And so he actually took this back to the Bible, and he talked about Moses, right? So Moses was making all of these excuses, like, what if they don't believe me? What if this? What if that? I'm not a good speaker. And God was like, use what's in your hand, which was his staff. Right? So that's what we tend to do a lot of times, is we make excuses. Like, what if my grandfather said, I only have a 6th grade education?
Yep. And he wouldn't have went off and been as successful as he was, which is crazy. Listen.
So one of the things that I thought was really quotable was, your hesitation becomes a limitation.
I would absolutely agree to that. And it's so many things. I feel like for me too, you know, when you think about your life and how I had that drive to want to do like broadcasting and journalism, but it was like, well, you know, I live in Milwaukee. It's not a big market, so, you know, I can't do that. But it's like, who knows? Like, now we're here and we're doing this podcast in Milwaukee. Like, who knows what can make of our podcast, but we're pouring into it. So, you know, eventually we'll get whatever we get in return. But that doesn't deter me now. And I wish I would have had that same mindset back then to kind of pursue what I wanted to do.
Right. You know, I think that's what we're taught, because a lot of people think like, oh, to get discovered as an actress, I need to go to Hollywood or to go, you know what I mean? I do think that that's taught, though, because people always say like, oh, has anybody made it from where you are?
Yeah. A lot of people don't even know where Milwaukee is.
And so instead of trying to create the path, we try to travel the path that was already done, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? If it's proven to be successful. But then I guess for me, it makes me think, well, then how am I going to stand out in Hollywood if you know what I mean? Like if I'm amongst a bunch. So I don't know. I think that the important thing to do is just start where you are, because there's all these different mediums that you could use. So going back to the example of the actress, well, use YouTube, you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Which, in Issa Rae's case, I mean, that was amazing. Like, that was her start. So that was amazing.
It really was. But he also talked about how important it is to have patience and how that's difficult for millennials.
We want it now.
Yeah. It's my money. And I want it now.
Listen. I swear. And then it's funny because he brought up the Kardashians and how they kind of exploded. And then he went on to say, you know, there are those supernovas on occasion. However, make sure that, you know, you kind of, you don't have to bite off more than you can chew. You know, like you said, start where you are, start small. And once you kind of get everything in line and in order, you can grow as your business grows. You don't have to make everything happen overnight. Because for most people, it doesn't work like that.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he said, is that Kim Kardashian is actually an exception. But what we do is we keep seeing all these exceptions and we want to make that the primary path. But what ends up happening is you miss steps when you rush. And it's funny because my pastor literally on Tuesday night, he literally just talked about that. Like how you're rushing through these steps and then you get to step 5. But you needed in order to get to step 6, you need something from step 2 and 3, but you skipped them. So now you got to go all the way back down to step 1. Hello, somebody. Listen, and start all over.
Amen. That sounds like my my workout life. Like, really, like, get it together. You lose 5 pounds. You be like, I don't need this no more. People start noticing you looking thin, and then it just goes downhill from there.
Yeah, the next thing you know, now you didn't gain 30.
Exactly. It's like, what?
And you're like, but I only needed to lose 10. Like, how the heck, what happened?
Listen,
the goal was to lose 10. Now I didn't gain 30.
Okay, we going to do better in 2018. But that's so true.
But he was just talking about how if things don't happen quick, we feel like we failed. And delayed does not mean denied.
No, at all. At all.
So yeah, we gotta pace ourselves.
Absolutely.
And just
until the old adage, like anything worth having doesn't come, you know, quickly. It takes time. For most people.
Yeah.
Listen.
But just to kind of belabor the point, like basically what he was saying is if you don't expect a process, then when you encounter a process, it looks like failure, but it's really just process. And so he even said graduation is gradual, right? So in order to actually reach the place where you've arrived, it should be a slow and steady process.
Right. All gems.
All gems, yeah.
Listen.
Like, I had to kind of listen a couple times because I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, like this is also
Wait a
on
minute.
Audible. You can like hit like clips. So like if you hear something, you can press like the clip button. I was getting down, hitting my clip button, like, oh, that was tight. Like, let me clip that. It was, yeah, all gems.
Yeah. And so kind of going back to what we talked about in the last episode, realizing that when you become a business person, that you are that, like, you're now a businesswoman or a businessman, right? So sometimes we get so busy doing the business that we don't look at all the aspects that are required. Like, for example, promotion, right? So I can't be so far in the weeds with my business that I'm not even marketing it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so he explicitly said, if you don't promote, you will fail.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially in today, like these millennials, like they want to see like what's out there. So you definitely have to make yourself known, and you are your label or your brand, or you're it. So you got to make it happen and to show it.
Right. And talent and skill is not enough, right? You need to market it. So just simply having it, who cares if you have it if I don't know you have it?
Right.
And one thing I can say about my dad is whenever you see him, he always has on, he has hats, shirts, sweatshirts, everything with his logo and with his name.
Listen, I ain't mad at him. We trying to get there.
Right. We sure are.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So like he said, it's just important to get that 30,000 foot view, you know, where it's like, okay, what are the components of my business? You know, I have to have an entrepreneur mindset. So being an entrepreneur isn't just simply having an LLC. Right. It's not just simply saying I'm the like I created this business. It's really a mindset.
Yep. It is.
So, and if you don't love it, you will fail.
Absolutely. Or if you try to rush it or skip steps or miss the process, it's not going to work.
Right. Exactly.
Come on, Pastor or Bishop. He is.
Yes.
Listen, I've been all in this. Trying to think. He talked about, he was given another really good example, and I think it goes back to Miss Robbie too, to go back to her. But I really like how he was just saying that, you know, she came from that musical background, and then she had this kind of, she could cook, like that wasn't like something that she was like, oh, I'm gonna do this, but it came back to her kind of full circle where she was like, well, this is something I can fall back on. But when he was talking about how she, you know, started to branch off and she met Oprah, and then like all of these other doors started to open for her. Not saying that, you know, you got to meet Oprah to be successful. You do, but you don't. So
it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt, but I'm just saying. But, you know, like just by taking that leap of faith, which is going back to part 1 where I thought that that's what this book was going to be about, taking a leap of faith. But I guess it does, in my mind, kind of still allude to that, where she opened these restaurants, and then, you know, Oprah was like, wow, I love her cooking, like, you know, let's talk, and all of these other doors kind of open for her. So to not have that fear and to kind of go off and do it, I think that's another part of that entrepreneur's mindset, where you gotta take that leap, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Definitely. But I think that that's also a sign that you are on the right path. You know what I mean? Because you know how they say that typically, like, okay, so T.D. Jakes, I think one of the first books that I read, I think it was called Destiny. I want to say it was Destiny. And he talked about how if you want to know what you should do with your life, you really should ask your parents, what did you do as a child? You know what I mean? He said, because there's a common thread throughout your life that, might show up differently, but it still shows up. And, you know, that you should really look at the patterns in your life. And it really goes back to the type of child that you were.
That's
And
funny.
so
That's
when
interesting.
I read that book, I asked my mom, and she was like, you were one of those kids that you didn't really have to worry about. Like, you were pretty self-sufficient. Like, she was like you weren't rolling up around yourself. Like, you were like, oh, I want to go to college. Oh, what does it take to get there? Oh, I'm going to do this program because I don't know what it takes to get there, because did nobody in my family go to college. But I could see that. You know what I mean?
That's really
And
interesting.
so, yeah.
And I'm thinking back to how I was like, I was really curious. Like, I guess I'm always wanting to learn stuff. And I do that now. Like, anytime, like, okay, this is so random. But the other day I was watching Malcolm X, and I know who Malcolm X is. But I'm always curious to be like, okay, well, what else can I find out about him? So I immediately like Googled,
Exactly.
like, I want to know more. And then I went into like the Sunni Islam. Like, I was going way, I don't know what I was doing, but I got way far left to where I wanted to go. And I was like, oh no. But just that curious mindset, and I've always been a curious person, even as a child. So I think that's definitely something my mom would say. Like, I would get into everything, but that's another story for
Yeah.
another day.
Yeah, you should ask Mama
Yeah,
Penny D,
I'm an
to see what she says, because
Interesting.
it might make sense now. And I know, like, for me, sometimes I actually get a little bit irritated, but people will text me really random questions, and I'll be thinking, like, why didn't you Google this?
Listen, Google is my best friend.
But then, but what is it really saying, right? People consider me to be a resource, right? So, and I love to give information,
Yep.
right? So some people's thought is, oh, I should ask Sherry, she should know. But a lot of times when they ask me, I'm thinking like, or you could have just Googled it and got it right
Right.
away.
You said, listen, Google would have been faster, bro.
Yeah,
But hey,
would have been a
we
lot
want to ask
faster.
you too because you got all the answers. So there you go. That's funny. And now I'm thinking about like having my own kid. Like, well, you already know he's very self sufficient. Like, he does
He
everything on
is.
his own. So
He is.
it'll be
And I was trying to
interesting.
write that in a way that wasn't shady
But
on
it's
Instagram.
funny because our listeners wouldn't know. So guys, my son just had a birthday. So happy birthday, JR. I'll put that on
Yay.
air. And yeah, I always half joke, because I'm kind of serious, that I like supervise him at this point. Like, he's like a real person. He takes care of himself. And I do that because I do want him to be a self-sufficient man. Like, I don't want my son to become a man that's has to rely on like any female, or rely on anybody for that matter. I really want him to be independent to a sense where he can take care of himself, where he can figure things out for himself. He can ask questions if he needs to, because that's what he does now. Like, if he can't figure something out, he can ask, mom or dad. So yeah, that was so totally sidebar, but it's interesting. I'm definitely going to ask my mom, like, how was I as a child?
Yeah, you should. Or even just anyone who knew you back then.
Just my
But
mama. No, I'm just kidding. Just my mama.
they don't know me.
Right.
No,
These people don't know me.
but
So bad.
so wait, quick sidebar. That reminded me of that episode of Marlon when he was like, "My mama don't even know who I am. You don't know me." Anyway,
So
whatever. That was a sidebar. Getting back to the topic. So it's funny because also, so at work, right? There's lots of meetings, and we're meeting about work, and then like sometimes people will be like, "Oh, is it okay if I set up a meeting with you like about another topic?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, sure. Like, what is it?" And it'll be something personal.
Oh. They don't
And they'll
pay
be
me the
like,
big bucks for that. Y'all tripping.
and they'll be like, "Yeah, I just wanted your opinion." I'll be like, "Okay." And so sometimes I'm thinking like, what? Like,
Listen.
what? How did we get here? Because I don't know you like that.
Listen, you gotta start
But I
charging
think
these people.
that's just me. I am.
No.
I
This
am.
consult, what is it called? Consultation. Why can't I say that word? I'm retarded.
Consultation.
There you go. This is going to charge you. Listen, because ain't nothing in this world free, child.
Yep, I'm just gonna start dropping bills.
Listen,
like,
right.
Here's my invoice.
Send them a PayPal invoice. They're gonna be like, "What is this?" Well, that time I gave you advice, here it is.
Right. Definitely.
I'm out.
So yeah, so he also talked about how, you have to be able to identify trends, right? And realize, get an understanding of what the problem is that you can fix. So,
yeah.
And how important it is not to ignore the facts, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, right now, the timing is right for women, right? Like, we popping right now.
Absolutely,
with these businesses, and in particular, Black women.
Absolutely.
Same thing with education.
Yeah.
Like the rate in which that's growing is phenomenal right now. So,
I love it. I love everything about that. But like you said, I mean, we all have these wonderful ideas. There's $1 million idea in all of us. Okay. I think everybody has said that. More recently, I know P. Diddy has talked about that we all have these $1 million ideas, but it's about what you do with it. And, how if you're looking at the trends, I can't be like, oh, well, I'm gonna start this, I don't know, this snow cone business, and it's winter. Like, don't nobody want that. Like, this is dumb. So
this snow cone business.
That was the first thing I could think off the top of my head. But to really think and like plan accordingly for what you're trying to do, because there is a market probably for your idea, but it's about thinking about it, like you said, as an entrepreneur and looking at all of those different avenues that, can take to either make it pop or crumble. It's up to you.
Right. Definitely. It's up to you.
Yeah.
So chapter 4 was called It Takes Two. Inspiration and Innovation.
Yes. Cracking.
So he talked about Miss Michelle Nichols, and how important it was for her. So she was an African American woman on Star Trek, and he was saying how important it was for her to be portrayed as a role model, because it helped blaze the trail for others to come behind her. And so the big point there was that sometimes we want to kind of give up on where we are, but you can't, because you're paving the way, and you may not realize it, or, it may not be close to home just yet,
right?
But you can't, because people are watching,
right?
And those people are modeling after you,
And I didn't know this story, so that was definitely piqued my curiosity to be a nerd and Google stuff. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, and actually I meant to Google that, but I didn't. So I hope that that's correct, but that's from what I recall.
Yeah. Because he talked about how she went to the show's writers or creators and like said, I want this character's name to be this. And I was like, that was at that time, like, what? Like, first of all, you're a Black female. Yeah. That's number one.
Yes.
And number two, you're on this show, and you're probably the only Black person. I think she was the only Black person on the show, right? I could be wrong,
I believe so. But yeah, she wanted the character's name to be, I want to say it was African or something. Yeah. But I was like, okay, girl, go ahead, ask for what you want.
Because her name was like Aurora or something like that. I don't watch Star Trek. I'm so ashamed.
Yeah, me either. I don't either. So y'all, all of this information for the last 30 seconds could be incorrect.
Could be all wrong.
We don't watch Star Trek.
Listen, but if you watch Star Trek, let us know, okay? Send us an email or DM. But the point is that she came up with that name because it meant something in Swahili. So I thought that was really dope that she did that. And I'm sure a lot of people don't even know that. Like, oh, this is a cool name. Like, but no, that name actually means something. And then for her character, because at the time, he was talking about how at this time when Star Trek was first released, like all these countries were trying to be the first country to make it to outer space and to be on the moon. So to see her as a little Black girl, to be like, wow, she's on this show with these aliens and all this cool stuff. She's on a spaceship. Yeah, I want to be an astronaut. This is dope. Like, I see her. That representation was there. So shout out to Mae Jemison and all these other like astronaut people. Like, what an example to see every night on TV, to see her.
But not only that, but by making the character's name African, to me that speaks volumes, because there was a young lady, she actually was a intern here a while ago. But I remember this one time she made this status, and I was like, yes. She made the status on Facebook. She has an African name, and people often mispronounce it. But the thing about it is people don't mispronounce German names, and they just don't.
Listen, never.
They just don't. And so, she made a long status about it, and the point, I couldn't agree more. But basically, she was saying, I won't be responding. You need to ask. If you don't know, then you need to ask, because if it were any other name, you would ask and you would keep practicing until you got it right. And you know what? She's right. Because when I have meetings with other people and they have foreign names or something, people usually say, wait, how do you pronounce it? Say it again. Okay. Oh, got it. All right. You know what I mean? Like that, people put a lot of effort into that. So you're not going to just dismiss mine.
Absolutely.
Like, that's not okay.
I agree to that.
This is my name.
Yeah. And my name is my name.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen,
that's like I said what I said.
Listen, shout out to The Wire. My name is my name. And you don't have to recognize that. And you know how I am. Like, I'm huge with names. Like, if you tell me your name, I'm going to remember it. Like, I'm pretty quick with names. Because I feel like that's you. That's your brand. You are that name. So to me, being respectful, like I remember everybody's name, and it shocked some people. Like, how do you know my name? Well, you just told me what it was, so I'm going to call you by your name, which is so amazing. And at that time, I'm sure it sparked a lot of Black parents to kick out these Swahili names to their kids to just see that representation of that. I thought that was amazing. And I'm sure she didn't know that was kind of going to be on her back, but it was. And I feel like she did a great job of carrying that on her shoulders.
Right. Definitely.
I'm definitely going to be Googling her. I don't know what else she was in, though.
I agree.
But she tight.
Yeah. But what were we looking at last night with the guy from Grey's Anatomy?
Oh, Jesse Williams. Is that his real name? Yeah, I think that's his real name. So Jesse Williams. So the shirt said, so there's this shirt that you can purchase. And I'll have to post a shirt on our Instagram, but you can purchase this shirt. It says, F it, I'll do it. Black women. Which is so true, because I feel like my mama say that all the time. Like, I'll do it myself. I don't need y'all. And I'm like, whatever. But yeah, he posted like time and time again, like always, like Black women handle stuff basically. And then somebody posted under, these trolls and was like, well, all women. And he was like, I said Black. So, and I can only imagine that he said it like that when he wrote it. Like, I said Black. Which is so funny. And it kind of made
that's how I interpreted it, because he put a period after it. He was like,
it was final.
I said Black.
Listen.
And you know what? The Shade Room took it that way too, because the next one said, I said what I said.
Yes, it was very final. Hilarious. And it made me think about our Bliggity Black episode, where I was just like, how come we can't like shout us out? Like, people are really offended by that, and it's crazy. But that's going back to our Bliggity Black episode. But
yes, it is.
Yeah.
So staying on
right. Let's get back to topic.
Guys.
Sorry.
So TD Jakes talked about how sometimes we feel like we're going around in circles. We feel like we're trapped. We're either trying to please our boss, we might be trying to care for young kids or parents, and we might be working 2 to 3 jobs, right? So just kind of being in that place where there's no exit. And so he used an example. I wasn't too familiar with this story, but I think it was a Greek island, and he was saying that there was no way out. There was no way to get out, so they decided to go up.
Yeah, Icarus. I think that's what it's called. I'm familiar with this story.
Okay.
So on the island where there was no way out. So Icarus's dad like built these wings out of wax. So he tells him, like, don't fly too close to the sun because the wings gonna melt, bruh. And of course, Icarus, being the child, does not listen to the father. And he's, excited. He's, flying. He has these wings to get out of this, area that was closed off. So he flies too high and the wings melt. This is not funny. So the wings melt and he falls in the ocean and he drowns. So that's kind of how the story ends. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Basically he was saying that, you need to listen to the people who kind of know and been there before. And I think we talked about this in part 1. Like, you're not reinventing the wheel, and I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs can go wrong, where they think they have to kind of do it by themselves. But there are people who have similar experiences, and they can tell you how to avoid falling in the ocean.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't want to take that help because they think they know everything. They think they can do it on their own, when there is somebody else who has these exact same experiences and went through the same thing that can help you get to where you need to go.
Right. Definitely. He also talked about how sometimes we're looking for certain scapegoats, but it's really important to build structure. So, for example, a degree does not mean a well-paying job, right? Because there are lots of people that are working at the gas station and they got master's degrees.
Listen here.
Right? There's some people that just aren't using them, that are underusing them, or where it just, maybe they got into a field that wasn't that lucrative. So that required this degree.
Listen,
which is crazy, right? But hey, now, the requirements are getting higher and higher, where you need degrees to do things that you just didn't need a degree to do before. So
right, you need degrees to do the basic minimum today. I feel like what? No,
it's ridiculous.
It really is.
It's just becoming more and more competitive.
Like what? Like I need to have a master's degree. I need to have worked for the FBI. I need to find stem cell. Like what? This is too many requirements for this basic entry level position.
Right. And then once I got the degree, then you're going to tell me I ain't got no experience. But that's another story.
Right.
Anyway.
I swear.
He was talking about how the greatest thing that you really have is your mind. And what's crazy is because, I always talk about how I'm a sapiosexual. And sometimes, like I'm not the one that'll be like, ooh, he fine. I want to get to know him. I'll just be like, ooh, he fine. But that's it. Because I don't care.
And for our listeners who may not know what that means, that means that she's attracted to your mind.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. But he's right about that. Like he said that, I was like, see, I knew it. Because that's where I put a lot of value. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be with you because you're fine.
Right.
I don't care, But if I see them wheels turning, and it's not really, and I don't even want to say like people that are smart. I'm going to say people that are intelligent, because I think that there's a difference.
Right.
But I'm attracted to the way people think.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But one of the things that he talked about was how God made the shape of a man first. So going back to the fact that you have to have structure, right? You can't just say like, oh, I'm gonna get this degree, then I'm gonna make a lot of money. No, what is your plan? Because God formed the man first, and then he inserted his mind. So in order to be successful, it's important to build infrastructure.
Yeah, he definitely talked about that infrastructure.
Right. So you need structure to support whatever it is that you think that you're going to do. So whatever your day-to-day operations are, how does it flow? Right. And also, what infrastructure are you setting into place to allow you to grow?
Right. Yeah. And when he again, I love examples and analogies. I think that's how I learn. That's definitely my multiple intelligence. But yeah, he talked about how, God had this idea of Adam, but then he didn't like breathe life into him until he had everything else in place, kind of. And I was just like, wow, that was a great example. Like I needed to hear that. So that was tight. So sometimes, I mean, even me personally, like I have all these ideas and things that I want to do, and I kind of jump the gun. And I've done it so many times. Like, even you have told me personally, like, don't just pick this job because they're offering you XYZ. Like, go keep interviewing. Like, look at all these other jobs and see what they have to offer. But well, not since then, but I would typically just be like, well, they offer me this, so I'm going to take it. Like, that's the end. Like, I don't need to interview anymore. But now it's just like, no, like, see what everybody else has going on and kind of let that kind of guide you before you just jump into something. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs might do that too, where they have these ideas, like I said, but they're not really thinking about how to pick what's best for them and then to piece it all together to make it their business, or to make sure that they can soar in the end.
Right, definitely. But I would also say, even when it comes to even like buying a car, like I remember a couple years ago when I was buying my car, I knew what kind of car I wanted. I wanted a Chevy. And so I bid all the Chevy dealers against each other. I was like, well, Andrew said they was going to do this. Yeah. Well, Heiser said they was going to do that.
Yeah.
And, I pretty much was like, okay, this is my credit score. This is what I'm looking to do. Don't run any numbers, because I only want the one who I'm going to go with to run the numbers, right? Because then I got to take the hit on the
on your credit
app. But I'm telling you that this is what it is. So what we gonna do? You know what I mean? That. And I actually ended up going with one that was further away from my house, and that's what I told him. I said, well, this one is actually right down the street, so it's actually more convenient. So I just had them throwing in different stuff, because that's how I am. I'm just that way sometimes.
But that makes sense.
It's a good, which is good on my end,
right.
but that also lets you know that you will have those customers like that.
Oh, sure. And you
got
to roll with it.
You got to bring quality.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to bring that quality there.
Exactly. You got to roll with it. And that's absolutely smart. And it goes to what TD Jakes was saying, like being patient. Don't just jump the gun and rush because you have this right in front of you, but take your time, because then you're trying to get the best of whatever, you're doing.
Right. Definitely. And so one of the examples that he used was, some people love to cook, so they have the experience, right? They've been cooking for 30 years and they have the artistry, but do you have the business experience? Do you have the management? Do you have the investment mind to know, okay, when should I expand? When should I open up another location? Do you have metrics? Like, what are your measures of success?
Yeah.
What does good look like? How are you saying that you're, how do you know that you're successful? What are your key performance indicators? And I think that that's where a lot of times people are lacking, because they think like, oh, I do this well. Yes, but what about everything else that has to grow up with this? He also talked about inspiration, right? So inspiration must be grounded. And he talked about how important it is just to start small, because you may learn something along the way accidentally. And I think this is when he talked about Coke. So I think they were looking for like was it in a pharmacy? They mixed something incorrectly. I think they were trying to cure a headache.
Yeah.
Right? They were trying to cure a headache or something.
It was a headache.
And it was and they were like, this don't really cure the headache, but this is a mighty refreshing drink.
So mad. I said, well, we didn't get what we wanted, but voila.
Right. Yeah,
Listen,
definitely.
That's Coke is another like amazing story of, how they started, which is really dope, because here we are all these years later and people still like live by Coke. So. Right.
He also talked about how important it is to plan, right? So you're promoting, you say you want this business, but again, back to infrastructure. What infrastructure do you have to support it? Because the worst thing that could happen is that your business skyrockets and it becomes a missed opportunity. A missed opportunity, because you can only do small jobs.
And that made me think about what we kind of went through. So and I guess people don't really think about that, but I guess it's important to look at that, like, oh, well, your business is booming. However, like, do you have the manpower behind it? And it made me think of something that we just went through kind of personally with our podcast. So I was just like, wow, I wonder, was it kind of that, which is why what we needed didn't get done in the amount of time. So, yeah.
Right. Definitely. So, so he was saying how, even birds have to practice flying, right? So they were made to fly, right?
Yeah.
But they still have to practice doing it.
Yeah.
And then back to what you were talking about God making Adam. God made everything else first, right? So he didn't just shape his body first, but he literally made the heavens, the earth, the land, the animals. He made Adam last and then said, you are ruler over everything.
Yeah.
So he literally created food for him, a place to stay, right? The Garden of Eden, everything.
Everything.
Night, day, all of that.
Hooked them up.
Read Genesis. Right. If you don't know, read Genesis.
Read it all. It's all there. It's actually
isn't it?
Really interesting. So yeah, go to that. But he hooked them up, basically.
Right. Exactly.
That infrastructure, having that foundation set to say, okay, I'm gonna set you up to be successful. And like, I think we keep mentioning it too, like, God will prepare you. He's giving you the wood. If you want to build a chair, if you say, oh, I want to make a cake, he gonna give you all the ingredients you need. But it's us that has to kind of put it together. And it's in us. That $1 million cake is in you somewhere, but you got to think about it and be strategic about what you're doing and making sure you have that set foundation.
Right. So moving on to chapter 5, he starts off talking about what he is known for, right? So a lot of people know Bishop T.D. Jakes as a preacher.
Yep.
So he said, people comment that my sermons are really effective, right? Like they always and I listen to him all the time, and he's an amazing speaker.
Yeah.
But he said, but what y'all don't understand is how prepared I am. And he said, preparation causes liberation. So I don't have to sit there and be stuck to my notes and stay behind the pulpit. I don't have to, because I am prepared. He said, learning stimulates me. And I was like, yes, because, I'm a learner too, and you are too.
Yeah.
But when you know something intimately, you have the freedom to customize it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So doing all that work ahead of time allows you to be more creative in your delivery, right? Because you have it, it backwards, forward. So you don't have to recite, right? You get to literally shift and change according to your audience, right? So, I'm feeling this way in this moment, or the audience is giving me this type of feedback. So I can just on the spot make minor adjustments because I know what I'm preaching about.
Right. And I love that. I think that's why I admire so many, pastors and preachers and bishops, because a lot of them do have a really wonderful gift and a way with words. And I know your pastor is one. I've heard him speak, and I was just like, yep, he's amazing. Pastor Lindsay is another one where it's just like, wow, like the things that they say and the connections they make. Again, I like real world connections. So if you can relate it to like real life, I'm sold. Like, this makes sense to me. So that's very true. Yeah.
Right.
And to think about the time they spend like going over the word and, making it real for, people who are not as intelligent in the word of God as they are. Well, maybe not intelligent, but you know what I mean. So yeah.
Right. Definitely. But one thing that my pastor does is he sits on the same message. Like, we kind of dwell there for a while.
Okay.
So he'll preach it on a Sunday. He'll talk about it again on Tuesday, and then you're going to get it again on Thursday before he moves on, because he's really dissecting.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's smart, because the Bible, it ain't no, I'm finna talk about this one time. We gotta go deep. Like, get on in here. But that's funny. I mean, I guess that's how I feel about just my blog and being single. Like, people ask me, like, so, when you do get into a relationship, like, how are you still gonna blog about being single? Because I have far more experience being single than I do being in a relationship. Like, this has been you born single. Like, this has been my whole life. So it's nothing for me to be like, okay, I can tell you what it's like to be single. I have far more experience doing that, and I have far many more encounters with being single. So it's always interesting when people ask me, like, so what are you gonna do when you get in a relationship? I can still talk about being single because I have far more experience of being single than being in a relationship.
Right, definitely. That is so funny. I was born single. Listen, single, I'm gonna die. No,
listen, I'm gonna die single. No, I was kidding. Oh goodness.
Well, when you die, marriage is till death do you part.
That's
so I
true.
guess at the moment that you die,
right,
you are single. So
listen.
The thing that he talked about here is something that people probably struggle with a lot, but it's documenting the master plan.
Which is something I think you're extremely good at. But yeah, I'm not.
So design a business that accounts for problems, right? So at the end of the day, everything is going to just fall into place. Like, that's not life. That's not reality. So there's some things that you should be able to predict. And it's crazy because in my role, so we obviously have a lot of different businesses that we work with. Before we allow them to do business with us, that's one of the things that I actually walk through with them is contingency planning. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if your building happens to catch on fire? I still need you to make parts for me. You know what I mean? So what is your plan, right? To ensure that you won't disrupt my business because something happened with yours.
Right.
You know? So with that being said, you have to do that internally as well, right? Because your business, if something goes awry with your business, then that may mean that you don't get the money that you're looking to get, or you're not reaching the goals that you're looking to get.
Right.
So that's why it's important to plan ahead. So, you know, we talked before about how most businesses follow some sort of cycle, but there's just also things that need to be aware of, right? So what else is going on in the market? Does that impact my business? What's going on in the economy? Does that impact my business? Well, like, for example, right now in Milwaukee, all these pods are popping. So everyday media is cracking. You know what I mean? But what if something, right? Everybody on the limo, right? Forget the bandwagon.
Listen, the limo, we all in here.
We on the limo. Right. But then it's like, okay, well, what if something happens where something shifts? You know, are you going to make a modification to your business that allows for that? Like, what if the next big thing is like live pods that, you know what I mean? Where every day it's always a camera. I don't know. I'm making this up. So I don't know.
Who knows?
But it's just, you know, it's just how do you account for things so that it's not like, oh, we were booming yesterday and today our doors are closed, which is actually kind of what happened to my mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? Like here one day, gone tomorrow. Then you become like a one-hit wonder.
I know.
You know?
No, don't be nilly vanilly.
Yep. One-hit wonder.
Or Trinidad James. I'm thinking of all these one-hit wonder people. Oh, yeah, that's sad. So don't do that.
Right. So he talked about the importance of having a mission, motivation, outlining what success looks like. And it's funny because those are some of my key phrases. Like when I'm working with suppliers, like what are the conditions of success, or what does success look like? Like, how are we measuring this? You know what I mean? Knowing who your ideal customer is, knowing what makes you unique, what sets you apart, right?
Right.
Who needs this? Right. So that's why I like, for example, for us, like I use certain hashtags. So if people are searching for certain things, they're going to find us.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I do that based off of who I think listens or should listen to this type of thing. Same thing with us hooking up with Chantel from the Power Her Network, right? Like, okay, well, the type of people that are going to come to this event are people who should be people who want to get better or some type of improvement, right? Because that event was a panel discussion, right? So where people are learning, essentially. So
yeah, it made sense for us to be there. And I think you do a lot of that too, with just like the insights of how Instagram kind of gives us those insights. And the same thing with SoundCloud, like you'll go over like, well, look, like this is who's listening here. You was kind of showing me like, okay, well, these are the people listening here, and this is the percentage of men and women. Like you were giving me all like the statistical information. It was just like, yeah, this is great. Like I'm so glad. So it helps for us to think about, okay, who are we reaching? And you know, what, like you said, like why are we doing this? Who are we doing it for? Who is our target audience? Those are all things that I feel like helps us in the end, because it's like, okay, well, we know we doing this for these people who are, you know, steady listening to us. And it was interesting to see that we had a lot of listeners in, was it China or
Asia?
Asia, like huge listeners over there. So shout out to y'all and continue to listen to us because we appreciate that. But it's just interesting to see, you know, who we're reaching in our target audience and things like that. And it definitely helps us plan for future topics and everything. Like it's kind of like a trickle effect.
Yeah, definitely. He was saying, know why you will succeed.
Yeah. And it can't be just because I know I can. Like, no, we need some details.
Right, exactly. And then also future planning. So what does your business look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now? when do you consider it to be successful? When are you going to rescale it? When are you going to move? When are you going to sell?
Those are great questions to even think about for yourself. Like I'm just thinking like, wow, like why don't we kind of think like that just on our on a life basis? Like, how do you know you're successful in life, and where do you want to be for yourself? Like, not even on no entrepreneurship, but just for you as a human in this world. Like, why aren't you thinking like that?
Right, exactly. He also talked about knowing who the major players are, like who you're up against, right? So what are their strengths and weaknesses? So I guess think of that in the sense of who are your competitors?
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy because we do that here, at work all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in some instances, if they're a competitor and they offer something great, then we might actually partner.
Right. Which is why not? Y'all got something that we don't got. So, hey, let's work together.
Right. Exactly. Like, how can we both share this slice of pie? Like, I ain't going to fight you over this slice of pie.
Indeed.
You get a fork, I'm going to get a fork.
Listen, hey.
We're going to be good.
We're going to be good. We ain't got to fight. Like, listen.
Right. Because then you know what happens when you fight over pie, it just all falls.
Right. And then nobody wins. Right. Then we're all sad for no reason. So, no.
Yeah. Definitely.
Those are definitely life goals, and I'm glad that this is coming out with the new year impending, and I hope our listeners are thinking about, all of this stuff and taking notes as we're talking and reading along with us and taking notes as well. Because I feel like these, not only is it for, like I said, you starting a business or whatever it may be in your entrepreneurship life, but just in life in general. Like, I feel like these are great things to be asking yourself. So if you all vision board like us, these are definitely some questions that I need to be asking myself as we go into this new year.
Right. Definitely. So then he also, one of the last things that he talked about was the weight of your success, right? So knowing that stress is not really, well, it can be, but it's not always burnout. It's often new roles and responsibility and lacking the structure. So here we go again with structure to support this.
Yeah.
So lacking the structure of support for what you are carrying. So if you don't have infrastructure or structure that allows your daily operations to be successful, it becomes stress.
A stress. Yeah. And a bad stress.
Yes. And so a business plan is the source for controlling your stress. So, like he said, don't let your ideals, one of the things that he said was just making sure that you're just not biting off more than you can chew.
Right.
And a lot of times the daily things that you need to do, they're really simple, but it just becomes, it looks monumentous because there's so many of them. But if you plan ahead or if you plan accordingly, like, for example, I'm going to be out of town. We won't be able to record on the day that we're supposed to record. So we're recording today so that we can continue to drop every week.
Right.
So that me being out of town doesn't disrupt our operation. Right.
Absolutely.
So
we're making it work.
So definitely.
And to make those adjustments. I mean, if you want to be successful, you have to encounter those things and make those adjustments as necessary.
Right. Definitely.
All right.
Yes. One of the last things was get customer feedback.
I love that. I love that. And a lot of people don't think of that. And every time, like, I think Scarlett told me this, like, as far as like looking for apartments and stuff. And she's always like, I always look at the reviews. And I think she does that with like apartments, like hotels, like she does that with everything. And it's true. Like, what people have to say now, sometimes people just be crazy and people troll. But for the most part, when people really leave like authentic feedback, it's really like helpful to whatever this company is, whether it's a app or a pod, for instance. Leave us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. But it is really great to hear that. And to get that customer feedback, to know what you're putting out and who you're getting it to, what they think about what you're doing. So
yeah, definitely. And then, you don't necessarily have to shift for every little comment, but just
But
looking, if you're seeing a trend, are people
yep.
saying the same thing? Is something a problem? Is it, for example, for us, initially we were not on iTunes, and we got that feedback. Okay.
Fast. Like, we gonna need for y'all to get on there.
We heard it loud and clear.
Yeah.
So we was like, not only are we going to get on iTunes, but you know what? We're even going to throw in Stitcher and iHeartRadio. Like, we're not trying to, we want anybody to be able to listen at any given time. So
we just gonna make it easy for everybody.
Right.
So yeah, but that was great feedback for us, and I'm sure any other pod or anybody else that's listening, that they probably got that same feedback. Like, okay, well, y'all not where I listen to it, so we need for y'all to get together. So, and that's a quick fix. That's an easy adjustment to make that happen.
Right.
And when you have that constant feedback, then it is easier for you to be like, okay, well, I didn't think about that, but let me, implement it, because I'm giving this for you. You all are my consumer. So I'm trying to make those adjustments for you all.
Right. Definitely.
I love that.
Definitely.
And I'm big on feedback, like whether positive or negative. I mean, it's all helpful in the end.
I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. All right.
Yeah, like I said, these chapters that we covered today, which were technically 3, 4, and 5.
4, 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Were like the meat. It was very meaty, these 3 chapters.
Yes.
So if you like me, I was clipping like every 30 seconds. I was pressing that clip button like, oh my goodness, this is great.
Yeah. Most definitely. Me too, child. Me too.
Listen here. So definitely get on board. What are we going to cover next episode? 6, 7, 8. All right.
Chapter 6, 7, and 8. So yeah. So what goes in the to-go box?
Oh, I'm definitely going to bring up that you can, maybe I did this in part 1 too, but I don't know. Maybe just because this is where I'm at in my life, but it's never too late to reinvent yourself. Just like Miss Robbie, and she's definitely a golden ager. She's beautiful, but it's never too late to reinvent yourself and do all of these things. I don't think she could have imagined at 70, 80 years old that she would have all these restaurants opening around the country. So don't give up on yourself.
Right, definitely. And for me, I would say remove the excuses, because if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to make it work. Start small. My granddad literally had a 6th grade education, so that means that he was limited in reading, writing, accounting, everything. You know what I mean? But he still found a way to have several successful businesses, because that was, not only was it important to him, but that was his livelihood, because as you can imagine, what kind of job can you have?
Right.
So he literally had to create his own work.
That's awesome.
Because you at minimum need a high school diploma to do a lot of different work. So
everything. And now you need a bachelor's degree. So it's
exactly to do the same work.
To do the same work. It's really crazy. So yeah, shout out to your granddad. That's awesome.
Yeah. So like I said, let's just remove the excuses. Instead of telling people why something won't work, figure out a plan to make it work. There are several different paths to get the same solution. Absolutely. Several different paths. So use your creativity. We are all creators. We co-create with God. So I'd say no more excuses.
Oh, I love that. Yep. And don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. No matter if you're 30, 40, 50.
Yes.
Whatever. It's not too late.
It's not too late. Alrighty. So thanks for tuning in to Brunch with Besties. Hey. Until next time. Peace.
Thanks, guys, for listening to Brunch with Besties podcast. Be sure to find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, now YouTube and Google Play. Basically, we airware. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a review and rate us. We would so appreciate that. Also, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to find us on Twitter. Our handle is BrunchWBesties. On IG, you can find us at Brunch with Besties Podcast. And if you'd like, you can shoot us an email. Our Gmail is brunchwithbestiespodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Peace.